All right, so this is the third video now in the series on kick processing, or just doing cool things with kick drums. And in this video, we're going to look at how to now use the LFO tool to achieve the splitting that we've been looking at, the dynamic splitting. So I'm going to go ahead and create a audio track and just copy down one of these kicks, okay? Because we only really need audio right now. All right, so here's the kick. And now let's start using the LFO tool. So I'm going to go get the LFO tool. I'm going to drag the LFO tool onto the track, and I'm going to group it, and that way we can create a kind of dry-wet chain. Awesome. So here's the chains. We're going to create a new chain. I'll just call this dry, and I'll call this transient. Just going to switch these as well. Just makes more sense to me this way. And then with the transient, of course, all we have to do is just draw in the transient. I'm going to just move these guys up. And if you have the LFO tool and you hold down Option, it'll lock it to the grid. I like to do that. And then you can turn the snap up so you can get a finer kind of resolution here. I'm going to turn these guys off, and I'm going to turn the waveform display on. I'm going to bring this guy over here, and we can go ahead and just get the transient. Now this is looping down like that, of course, but if you want to just make it straight, then you can just create a node, double click, and it makes it straight again. And so, of course, at this point, we have exactly what we were doing with the simpler instrument. We have a dry channel, or it's really, just the kick, and then we have the parallel transient layer, and we can mix it in, and we can grab the glue compressor so we can just clip the output. We can also add saturation. But the great thing is that obviously with the LFO tool, you have much more control over what you're going to define as the transient. All right, so here we almost have that punch that we were talking about. The simpler instrument is going to just chop it off like this, and it's kind of more of like an exponential kind of envelope like this. And then the decay is when we're going like this, just extending it out. Okay, but we don't really have that much control over what we could do here. But in the LFO tool, we do. We can make it longer if we want to. And so there's a lot more control here that we have to define the transient. And so that's kind of the advantage, one of the advantages that the LFO tool has over using something like simpler. But another cool thing that we can do with the LFO tool here is completely split the dynamics of the kick in a perfectly phase coherent way. And so I'm going to turn off the dry channel here, and I'm going to duplicate the transient channel. And I'm going to name this new channel the sustain. Okay, so we have transient and sustain. And on this sustain channel, what I want to do is flip exactly what we have going on with the transient channel. So here we have the transient channel, and all we need to do is just basically get the reverse. So I'll just move this up here, and I'll move these guys down here, and yes, something like that. And now, of course, what you could do is just flip this guy, because it'll completely invert the way that the volume is behaving. So for example, with the LFO tool, when we have this line down here, this means we're going from full volume down to negative infinity. But if I flip this to negative 100 here, what this means is that now up on top, this is negative infinity and this is 0. So we're starting quietly, and then we're moving actually up in volume. Okay, but that's a little bit backwards to me, and so this makes much more sense from a visual perspective. Obviously, the volume is down, and then it just comes up. Okay, so I like to work this way, though I did want to point out that you can very quickly just turn this to negative 100 and very quickly flip what's going on in here. Now this is a perfectly phase coherent way of completely splitting the kick. That's why this is so cool, and I want to show you what that means. So I'm going to grab the LFO tool again here, and we're going to use it just to monitor the waveform. So I'm going to come over to shape, and I'm going to go to basic flat 100. That's just going to make a flat line on top. I'm going to turn the depth all the way down because I don't need this one behaving, and turning the waveform display on as well. Okay, so this LFO tool right here is just monitoring the output from this audio effects rack. Now if I turn this audio effects rack off, basically all we're going to be looking at is the kick. Okay, there's the kick. Now if I turn the audio effects rack on, it should look exactly the same. And it does. because we're just simply using volume envelopes to separate the dynamics of the kick. And so it's perfectly phase coherent. So let me show you something that wouldn't be phase coherent. That's kind of a popular technique as well that I've seen online, and that is frequency splitting the kick. Now you can use linear phase EQs, but I just don't think that's the cleanest way to do this. I think that the cleanest way to separate kicks or to split kicks is through their dynamics, and it also just makes more logical sense to me. So frequency splitting is simply where, let's for example find a nice spot for the attack of the kick using the frequencies. Or maybe another way we can do it is let's find the nice low end. So let's get a gentler filter here. Yeah, maybe right around there, like 200 hertz. Okay, and so I'm just going to copy this EQ onto the sustain channel, and I'm just going to change it from a low pass filter into a high pass filter, just like this. Okay, so let's solo this, and immediately just from doing this, even though it's should be about the same, you can see we're getting phase issues, and this is what phase issues look like. And I even have this in the oversampling mode, so it's a little bit better. Okay, but right away, just frequency splitting at the same frequency is causing some problems. And so you have to go in and kind of massage things to get it right. But why do all that work when it's so much cleaner? And for me, it's way more intuitive to split the kick just simply using volume envelopes and split it out according to transient and sustain. And so this looks hideous. Let's get it looking a little bit better. Much better. Okay, we're back to the perfect phase coherence of dynamic splitting using volume envelopes and using the LFO tool. Cool, and now really the sky is the limit. You can just process these however you want. And so, I mean, my favorite thing is a saturation. Now, one thing I want to point out is that you want to put all processing before the LFO tool. And so, again, I mean, it's just really whatever you want to do. So, for example, here's some weird things, right? So, saturation obviously on the transient, and now the transient is hitting at 0. Okay, and so the saturator is going to bring it down just a little bit here. Okay, but what we can do is just start driving it. Okay, and then we can just give it a little bit of volume here. The soft clip here, that's going to just bring a little bit of the gain down. And so we can kind of bring that back up just a little bit. And then, I don't know, on the sustain channel, we can add like some downsampling or something like that. Okay, let's check this out. Just to get a little bit of grit over the top, maybe even some, let's switch this to the soft mode. Right? I mean, the sky is seriously the limit. Maybe we'll even add, I don't know, a reverb onto the sustain channel. I'm just going to go crazy, okay? Make sure, of course, though, that we have the LFO tool back there. So you're just giving it a little bit of extra push back there. That's cool. I mean, literally anything, right? So we could start EQing this a little bit more. So with the sustain channel, we can simply find out a good frequency, even by just looking at the LFO tool here, where we're going to boost, okay? So, of course, you can also check to see in the spectrum analyzer what the fundamental frequency is. But this is a quick way as well. We could just kind of scoop down here, look on the LFO tool to see where it gets boosted. Or we just find cool frequencies that sound good, like that. It's a nice frequency right there. And again, I mean, you could do all that. This is kind of just more fun, creative processing. And this rack really, with the splitting the transient and the sustain, it's really more about the mixing power that it has. Of course, the sonic power, the sound design almost that you could do with splitting the kick dynamically like this, that's cool. But this is really powerful for me in mixing. If a kick is not quite translating right what's wrong with it. It's either going to be the transient is not hitting hard enough to cut through over the other drums, or the sustain portion is not boosting. And having independent control over those two parts of the kick is really, really powerful. And so I hope you see the power in this. If you have any questions about this video, leave them down below. Again, we're going to keep going deeper into this. The next video, we're going to look at how to use this to sample any kick perfectly, and that's again really powerful. And then we're gonna go into something really crazy that's a lot of fun too. But again, leave any questions down below and I will get to those questions in the comment. And again, I can always update these videos as we go based on your questions if I forgot to mention something or something needs more clarification. All right, cool. I will see you in the next video.